They say Christmas is about family, about being together, about love. I believed that once before the people I loved taught me something else entirely. It was just after Thanksgiving when I got the message. A text from my son, for short words that changed everything. We're not expecting you. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a clear, clean dismissal from the one person I'd built my entire life around. My name is Thomas Grady. I'm a retired contractor. I built homes for other families for over 30 years. And when my wife passed, I poured everything into my son, Nathan. Paid off his college, co-signed his first mortgage, helped him land his first job through an old friend of mine. I gave him the keys to a future that cost me everything. And I never asked for much back. Just time. A phone call. Maybe a place at the Christmas table. If you're hearing my story now, I want you to remember this. Silence isn't always weakness. And kindness shouldn't be mistaken for blindness. If you've ever been forgotten by someone you helped build, stick around. This one's for you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like this, because some betrayals deserve to be told. I remember standing in my kitchen after reading that text, holding my phone like it might still change. We're not expecting you. I reread it at least 10 times. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was confusion. Then came something deeper. A hollow ache in my chest, the kind that feels like you're grieving someone who isn't even dead. Nathan wasn't just my son. He was my best friend for most of his life. We'd been through everything together. I taught him how to ride a bike, how to patch drywall. I was there when he broke his arm, when he got dumped in high school, when he got his first promotion. I even helped plan his wedding. His wife, Jenna, and I got along at first. But I noticed the distance growing soon after they moved into the house I helped pay for. I never put it into words, but I always knew Jenna wasn't too keen on me being around much. She'd make excuses when I tried to visit. Said they were settling in, or had plans. Nathan used to push back. He'd always say, "Come by anyway, Dad," or he'd drop by with a six-pack to catch up. But over the last year he started agreeing with her more often. And now here it was. The truth, plain and cold. I wasn't part of their holidays. Not anymore. I tried to be reasonable. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I waited a day. Then two. Still nothing. No response. I sent a message. Did I do something wrong? Nothing. So I stopped reaching out. But I didn't stop thinking. Nathan's house, the one they lived in, the one with the big bay windows and wraparound porch, still had my name on the mortgage. I didn't own it outright, but I was the one who secured the loan when they couldn't qualify on their own. I made the payments for the first year until Nathan's job stabilized. Even now, I was still listed as a guarantor. That meant I had a say. A very quiet, very powerful say. And so I started making phone calls. Just asking questions. Just looking into what my rights were. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't always look like a knife in the back. Sometimes it looks like an empty chair at Christmas. And sometimes revenge doesn't come loud or fast. It comes wrapped in silence and paperwork. I didn't cancel the mortgage immediately. I waited. I watched. I drove by the house once in early December. There were lights on the windows, a tree glowing in the living room. I saw Jenna through the glass, laughing with her family. I didn't see Nathan. I didn't see me. So I went home, made a pot of coffee, sat at my desk, and started the process. There's a clause in their agreement that they never read. I know because I paid for the lawyer. It stated that if the co-signer withdraws due to cause, the loan could be reevaluated and possibly called in full, pending a review. That was subjective. But abandonment, neglect, and lack of communication, those could be framed in very convincing terms. I wasn't doing it to hurt him. Not yet. I was doing it to remind him. 2 weeks before Christmas, I submitted the form. Quietly. Officially. Without fanfare. I didn't hear anything until December 22nd. A call from Nathan. First time in weeks. Dad. I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice was tight. Panicked. The bank called. They said something's wrong with the mortgage. Did you do something? I took a breath. I wasn't expecting your call, I said. He paused. Silence. Then, Dad, what's going on? Jenna's freaking out. We're going to lose the house. I looked out my window. Snow was falling. Merry Christmas, son, I said. Talk soon. And I hung up. Jenna was never the type to sit back and let things unravel. I should have known she'd make her move. I just didn't expect it so soon. The morning after Christmas, my doorbell rang again. I expected Nathan. Maybe even an olive branch. But it wasn't him. It was Jenna. She stood there in her red coat, arms folded tight, face flushed from the cold, or maybe fury. I opened the door, slow, measured. "Thomas," she said. "Not Mr. Grady. Not Dad. Just my name, flat and brittle." "Jenna," I replied. She didn't ask to come in. She just walked past me like she owned the place. Same way she'd walked into my son's life and quietly, methodically, turned him away from me. "I think this has gone far enough," she said, standing in my living room like it was a negotiation room. I closed the door. "Does Nathan know you're here?" She smirked. "He's asleep. He's been up all night worrying. We've been trying to reach the bank all week. They won't give us any answers without your cooperation." I said nothing. She walked to the mantel, the one that used to hold family photos, now bare. She ran her fingers across the wood like she was checking for dust. "We didn't mean to exclude you," she said softly, her voice suddenly syrupy. "It was just a hectic year. I thought a quiet holiday would be good for us." "For you," I corrected. Her eyes snapped to mine. Cold. Calculating. She tried again. "Look, we appreciate everything you've done. Really. But threatening our home." "I didn't threaten anything," I cut in. "I followed the terms of a contract. One you both ignored until it inconvenienced you." Silence. Then she dropped the act. "Okay, fine. What do you want, Thomas?" That's when I realized the weight of her question. What did I want? An apology? Respect? A time machine to go back to the days Nathan would call just to chat? "You ever think about what it's like," I said slowly, "to sit alone on Christmas, knowing you raised someone who can't even send a card?" She crossed her arms. "You think guilt is going to fix this?" "No," I said. "But maybe reality will." Her expression darkened. "You think you're the only one hurting? Nathan's under pressure. He's working overtime. We have our own problems. And none of that explains 4 words that cut deeper than a knife," I said. "We're not expecting you." That's what I got after a lifetime of showing up. She didn't have a response. Not one that mattered. "Tell you what," I said, walking to my desk. I pulled out a folder, the official response from the bank. "Here's the current status. I've filed for withdrawal. The bank has 30 days to review. After that, they'll make a decision. Maybe you qualify on your own. Maybe not." She took the folder, flipping through it, lips tightening. "If this goes sideways," she said quietly, "we could lose everything." I looked at her. So could I. I lost a son long before the mortgage got involved. She turned and walked out. No goodbye. I sat in silence after she left, watching the snow fall again. Everything felt quiet. Too quiet. Like the still before a storm. That night, Nathan called again. He didn't mention Jenna's visit. Just asked if we could talk, really talk. He offered to meet for lunch after the holidays, said he wanted to explain things. I told him I'd think about it, because for once I wanted to be the one in control. But the storm was coming. I could feel it in my bones. And when it hit, everything would change. Nathan picked the diner. Of course he did. Same place we used to go every Saturday when he was a kid. Red booths, silver napkin holders, greasy bacon smell clinging to the walls. I walked in 5 minutes early. Old habit. He walked in 10 minutes late. New habit. He looked like hell. Dark circles, collar wrinkled, hair uncombed. I'd never seen my son look so human. No polish, no press, just raw nerves and regret. "Hey, Dad," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded. "Nathan." We ordered coffee. Nothing else. Neither of us was hungry. "I'm glad you came," he said. "Didn't say I'd stay long," I replied. That set the tone. He fiddled with the sugar packets, his fingers restless. "I owe you an apology. For the text. For everything, really." I waited. "I wasn't thinking straight," he continued. "Work's been insane. Jenna's family was flying in. She said maybe we'd have a quiet holiday, regroup. I didn't mean to cut you out." "But you did," I said. "And not just at Christmas." He looked down. I took a breath. "Nathan, I raised you better than that. Taught you to show up. To check in. You don't just forget someone who built your life from the ground up." "I know," he whispered. I've been selfish. And scared. I didn't want to see the disappointment in your eyes. I figured silence was easier than explaining everything I've been failing at. "You haven't failed," I said. "You've drifted." He looked up, eyes glossy. "I'm sorry, Dad." I nodded, and for a second the wall between us cracked. Just a little. "About the mortgage," he started. "I'm not reversing anything," I interrupted. His face tightened. "But we could lose the house." And I could have lost everything if you never showed up again. Consider this a wake-up call, Nathan. I'm not a backup plan. I'm your father. He nodded slowly. So what now? That depends on you, I said. Are you ready to step up? He nodded again. Yeah, I am. But just as we started patching old wounds, I had no idea Jenna was making new ones behind our backs. 2 days after the diner meeting, I got a letter from the bank. Jenna had filed a formal dispute, claiming emotional duress and undue influence in the co-signing process. She was accusing me of pressuring them into the mortgage, suggesting I held financial power over them unfairly. I read it 3 times. She was trying to make me the villain. Again. Nathan hadn't called since our talk. I didn't know if he was in on this, or if she acted alone. But it didn't matter. The gloves were off. I called my lawyer. Explained everything. He laughed. Said Jenna didn't have a leg to stand on, not with the documentation we had. But still, it added a delay. A review. A shadow. It also lit a fire in me I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just going to protect myself. I was going to finish what I started. That weekend, I pulled out every receipt. Every statement. Every message proving how much I'd given, and how little I'd asked in return. The tuition bills I'd paid. The down payment check. The texts from Nathan thanking me, promising I'd always be part of their lives. I built a timeline. A paper trail of loyalty. By Monday morning, my lawyer submitted a counterclaim. Not just to dismiss Jenna's accusations, but to formally request my full release from the mortgage and repayment of the original co-sign contribution. Over $60,000. It was war. A week passed. Then 2. No word from Nathan. Finally, I saw him again, in a place I didn't expect. The bank. I was there dropping off forms when I spotted him through the glass meeting room. He looked different. Sharper. Like he'd had to grow up fast. He saw me. I saw him. We didn't wave. Later that night he called. She didn't tell me about the dispute, he said right away. I found out when the bank called. You believe her? I asked. No, he said quickly. She went behind my back. I confronted her. We fought. She's staying with her sister right now. I didn't say anything. I messed this all up, Dad? No, I said. You just forgot who you were raised to be. He went quiet. Then he said something I didn't expect. I want to fix this. Not just the loan. Everything. I believed him. We agreed to meet the next day. At the house. Their house. When I arrived, it looked different. Cold. Unlived in. Nathan met me at the door holding 2 mugs of coffee. Just like old times. He walked me through the place, pointing out small things I'd helped build. The railing on the stairs. The cabinet hinges. The paint on the walls. My fingerprints were everywhere. I didn't realize how much of you was in this house until I almost lost it, he said. We sat in the living room. The Christmas tree was still up, but the lights were off. There were boxes in the corner, Jenna's stuff. She's not coming back, he said quietly. At least not for now. I nodded. I spoke to the bank, he said. I'm refinancing again. Alone this time. Your name will be off everything within a month. I sipped the coffee. It was bitter. But warm. Good, I said. I also started sending out resumes, he added. Trying to get a higher paying role. Pay you back. I looked at him, really looked at him. No need, I said. That money's not what I wanted back. He swallowed hard. I know. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, You coming next Christmas? I shrugged. Depends on the invitation. He laughed. Then consider this your early one. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all we get. The first time Nathan truly showed up was the day he brought me lunch without saying a word. It was mid-January and I was in the garage reorganizing old tools just to keep busy. My hands were dusty, my mood worse, and suddenly there he was, holding a paper bag and 2 sodas. Figured you hadn't eaten, he said. I didn't say thank you. Not out of pride. Just shock. We sat on the tailgate of my truck and ate in silence for 10 minutes before either of us spoke. It was the easiest moment we'd had in months. I've got some news, he finally said. I got an offer. Senior project manager. Pays more, comes with a bonus. I start in 2 weeks. That's good, I said. It's across town. Farther from the house. But closer to you. I paused mid-bite. That intentional? He smirked. Let's call it poetic geography. For the first time in a while, I laughed. A real one. Short but real. It felt like something was shifting, like the frost between us was finally beginning to melt. But even as we were rebuilding, Jenna was unraveling. I got a call from Nathan a few nights later. She filed for separation. My stomach dropped even if I saw it coming. She said I chose you over her. Said I was obsessed with proving I wasn't like her father, cold, disconnected. She wants to stay in the house, but the new loan's under my name now. What are you going to do? He was quiet. Then he said, I'm letting her have it. I raised my eyebrows even though he couldn't see me. I'm moving out next week. Starting over. With what? He hesitated. Not much. A suitcase. Some furniture. A job. You. I didn't say anything right away. Then, there's a room here if you need it. I expected him to laugh it off. Or politely decline. But instead he said, that'd be nice. Just for a bit. Until I find my own place. That night I walked past the guest room, the one that used to be his years ago. It still had the old posters on the wall. The shelf of dusty trophies. A football jersey in a frame. I didn't touch any of it. Just opened the window and let the cold air in. 2 days later he showed up with 2 bags and a half-hearted smile. He looked lighter somehow, like he'd finally stopped running from whatever was chasing him. This okay? He asked, standing in the doorway like a tenant instead of a son. Welcome home, I said. We fell into a rhythm quickly. Morning coffee. Late night TV. Small talk that slowly grew deeper. He helped fix the gutters. I taught him how to patch up the old fence. We were strangers learning each other again, and somehow we liked what we found. One night we were both sitting on the porch when he asked, were you always this calm? I chuckled. No. Your mom was the calm one. He nodded. I wish I remembered her more. She saw everything before anyone else did, I said. She'd have known Jenna was trouble before I ever admitted it. He looked down. Yeah. I think part of me married Jenna because she was the opposite of you. Thought that would make me my own man. Turns out I just became a version of someone I don't even like. Then change, I said. No one's stopping you. He nodded slowly. I want to be better. Not just to you. To everyone. Maybe even to her, eventually. That was the thing about Nathan. When he finally decided to grow, he didn't do it halfway. By March, he had his own apartment. Nothing fancy but clean and full of light. He didn't ask me for help moving in, just sent me a picture of the keys in his hand and a message that said, this one's all mine. He invited me over for dinner a week later. Cooked pasta. Burned the garlic bread. I ate it anyway. We laughed like we used to. But it wasn't until May that the real test came. Jenna called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mr. Grady, she said. Formal, clipped. I wanted to speak to you directly. I figured, I said. There was a long pause. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye. I didn't reply. But Nathan and I are talking again. About trying to be civil. For the sake of closure. Closure? I repeated. Yes. And in the spirit of that, I wanted to ask, would you consider helping me with the house repairs? The front steps are cracked. The railing's loose. You built them after all. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Sure. Cool. You think after everything I'm going to fix your porch? It's not about me, she said quickly. It's about safety. I don't want my niece getting hurt. Then hire a contractor, I said. Plenty of them around. You're being petty, she snapped. No, I said calmly. I'm just finally done giving to people who don't see me until they need something. She hung up without another word. I told Nathan later, half expecting him to defend her. He didn't. He just said, that sounds like her. By summer, the bank finally cleared the loan transfer. My name was gone. No more ties. Clean break. I remember holding the letter in my hand, reading it twice just to be sure. Then I poured a drink, walked outside, and watched the sun go down from my porch. Freedom doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in an envelope. Nathan still comes by every Sunday. Brings coffee. We fix things together, leaky faucets, old wiring, our own regrets. He told me he started dating again. Slowly. Carefully. And I told him I'm proud of him. Not for surviving, but for finally showing up. As for me, I've learned something in all this. Sometimes the people you raise forget how high you lifted them. But if you stand your ground, if you remind them who you are without raising your voice, they'll find their way back. Eventually. And when they do, you don't have to rebuild everything. Just the parts that matter. The hardest part about forgiveness isn't saying it out loud, it's learning how to live with it quietly. After everything that happened, the silence, the disrespect, the sense of being discarded, I thought I'd feel more bitter. But as summer turned into fall, I started to feel something else. Not peace exactly. Something simpler. Like I could finally breathe without waiting to be needed. Nathan had found his rhythm. A better job. A modest apartment. He still came by on Sundays like clockwork. And every time he did, I saw less of the boy who forgot me and more of the man who remembered. But even then, part of me waited for the other shoe to drop. You don't spend decades holding people up without learning to expect the fall. It came one Thursday morning. Nathan showed up unannounced, looking rattled. Mind if I come in? I stepped aside, wordless. We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't touch his coffee, just stared at it. Then he said, "Jenna's pregnant." I didn't flinch, but I did feel something cold settle behind my ribs. "It's mine?" I asked carefully. He nodded. We were talking again, trying to keep things friendly. One night turned into that. I looked down at the table, traced an old scratch in the wood. "You getting back together?" "I don't think so," he said. "We've both changed too much." "Just still." "Jenna." I nodded once. "She says she wants to raise the baby on her own. But I told her I want to be involved." "And she's okay with that?" "Not really. She says I can visit, but that it's her call. She doesn't trust me." "She ever did?" He shook his head. "No. But I let her run things for so long, I don't think she ever had to." That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about him and Jenna anymore. This was about whether my son had finally learned how to fight for something worth keeping. "What are you gonna do?" I asked. He looked me in the eye. "Whatever it takes." And for once I believed him. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, mediated conversations, tense phone calls. Nathan didn't ask me to get involved, but I did anyway. I had a list of names, people I'd worked with over the years. One of them, a family attorney named Margaret Lee, owed me a favor from long ago. I passed along her number. Nathan called me later that week. "She's good," he said. "Smart. Direct. She'll help you stay in the picture," I said. "I hope so." Then he added, "Thanks, Dad." Really? 2 simple words. But they landed heavy. By mid-October, an agreement was drafted. Joint custody once the baby was born. Scheduled visits. Jenna fought it hard, but the paperwork was solid and Margaret was relentless. The hearing never went to court. I wish I could say it brought peace between them, but the truth is some bridges stay burned. And maybe that's okay. Because something else happened during that time, something I didn't expect. Nathan invited me to the ultrasound appointment. "It's a girl," he told me over the phone, voice shaking. "You want me to come?" "I'd like that." So I went. And when the nurse pointed at the screen showing us the tiny curve of her spine, the flicker of her heart, I looked at my son, and I saw it. Wonder. Fear. Love. The same look I had when I first held him. Afterward, in the parking lot, he leaned against his car and said, "I don't know how to be a dad with all this tension." "You don't have to get it perfect," I said. "You just have to stay." He nodded, silent. "You stayed for me," he said quietly. "I always would have." When the baby was born in February, a month early, Nathan called me from the hospital. "She's here," he said. 7 pounds, dark hair, screaming like she owns the place. I laughed, maybe for the first time in weeks. "Jenna's okay?" "Yeah. Tired but fine." "And the baby?" "She's perfect." He didn't ask me to come. But I showed up anyway. I waited in the hallway, holding a paper cup of stale coffee until Nathan came out, holding a tiny pink bundle in his arms. "She's asleep," he whispered. "You want to meet her?" He didn't have to ask twice. He handed her over like she was glass. I took her gently, looked down into a face so small, so full of promise, I thought my heart might break open all over again. "What's her name?" I asked. He hesitated. Then he said, "Lena." That stopped me cold. My late wife's name. I looked at him. "I wasn't sure if you'd be okay with it," he said. I didn't speak for a moment. My throat was too tight. Then I nodded. She'd have loved that. We stood there in silence, 3 generations folded into a quiet, sacred moment. I didn't stay long. Didn't want to make a scene. But as I walked down the hospital corridor, I felt something rise in my chest I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive kind. The hard-earned kind. The kind that survives fire. Nathan brought Lena home a week later, not to Jenna's but to his own apartment. The custody papers were clear, and for the first few months, it was messy, sleepless, full of phone calls and check-ins and tears. But I was there. He'd call me at 2 a.m. because Lena wouldn't stop crying. I'd drive over, hold her, sing the lullabies I once sang to him. We learned together. Slowly. And in those long nights and early mornings, I saw a man become a father in ways I never thought I'd witness. One night as I was getting ready to leave, Nathan looked at me and said, "I never understood how much you gave up for me. Not until now." I didn't answer. Just squeezed his shoulder. He already knew. We don't talk much about the past anymore. Not about the text message, the house, the silence. But sometimes I catch him staring at Lena the same way I used to look at him, like she's the world and he's just lucky to be orbiting it. And I think, maybe that's enough. Maybe the best revenge isn't silence or paperwork. Maybe it's legacy. Not in wealth, but in love. In being present. In building something better, one small act at a time. Lena will grow up never knowing the version of her father who forgot how to call. She'll know the man who learned how to stay. And maybe one day she'll ask him about me. And he'll say, "My dad? He taught me everything." That'll be enough. That'll be everything. I never imagined I'd be waking up at 5:30 a.m. again to make formula and rock a crying baby back to sleep. But here I was, 64 years old, half retired, walking circles around my living room with Lena nestled against my chest like she belonged there. Nathan had started calling it Teen Dad. That was his way of softening how often he needed help. But I didn't mind. In fact, it felt right. Lena had become the quiet center of my world. She was teething now, which meant the calm moments were rare and unpredictable. But they were worth it. All of them. Every gummy smile, every tiny yawn, every time she reached for my finger like it was the only safe thing in the universe. Nathan was trying. I'll give him that. He'd managed to balance work and fatherhood better than I thought he would. The man who once let people speak for him was finally finding his voice. In boardrooms, in courtrooms, and sometimes even with Jenna. Their communication was strained but civil. He'd bring Lena over for Jenna's weekends, always with a clear schedule and a backup plan. And Jenna? Well, she changed too. Not drastically but enough to notice. She was warmer with Lena. Still distant with me. But I didn't need her approval. I just needed her to be good to that little girl. And for the most part, she was. It was the end of April when something shifted. I was watching Lena while Nathan was in a late meeting. She was in her crib, napping after a chaotic hour of peekaboo and mashed peas. I took the opportunity to finally sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, just for a moment. The sky was gray, a storm threatening to break open, and I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt. Then my phone rang. It was Jenna. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. She'd never called me directly. Texted, yes, brief, logistical things about pickup times or questions about diapers. But a call? That was new. I answered cautiously. Hello. Her voice was low, tight. Thomas? I didn't know who else to call. I stood. Is something wrong? I just got off the phone with Nathan's boss. One of his coworkers called her. Nathan, he collapsed. They said it might have been stress or maybe something with his heart. They're taking him to the hospital now. Midtown General. I didn't respond. Just grabbed my keys and was out the door before she finished the sentence. When I got there, Nathan was already in a room, conscious but pale. He looked fragile in a way I hadn't seen since he was 10 and got pneumonia. I stood at the doorway watching him breathe. Jenna was sitting beside him, holding his hand. She looked up at me with something close to fear. They said it was stress-induced arrhythmia, she said. He's okay. But they want to keep him overnight for tests. I nodded. Did he say anything? He asked for you, she said. Right after he woke up. That nearly broke me. I stepped inside, sat beside him. His eyes opened slowly. Hey Dad. Don't you hey me, I muttered. You scared the hell out of everyone. He managed a weak smile. Guess I've still got that talent. I didn't laugh. You've been pushing too hard. I couldn't let anything fall apart again. Not work. Not Lena. Not you. You think all of this will fall apart without you holding every thread? I asked. He closed his eyes. I used to think it wouldn't matter if I let go. But now, I finally have something I don't want to lose. I reached over and put a hand on his shoulder. Then stop pretending you have to do it alone. He didn't answer. But his hand tightened over mine. Nathan stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. I stayed at his place with Lena, and Jenna even came by once. Not to fight. Not to argue. Just to see her daughter, and maybe, just maybe, to admit that we were all standing on the same ground now, whether we liked it or not. The night Nathan came home, we ordered takeout. Sat on the couch together, Lena asleep on his chest, cartoons playing in the background even though no one was watching them. He looked at me and said, I don't know how I'm going to do this forever. You're not, I said. You'll do it one day at a time. That's how we all do it. He smiled, then went quiet. After a while he said something I'll never forget. I thought you were done with me. After the mortgage thing. After everything. I thought about being done, I admitted. But love's not a switch. It doesn't turn off because someone disappoints you. It waits. It holds its breath. He swallowed hard. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, I said. But Lena does. And that means you get another chance. The next few weeks were slower. Steadier. Nathan reduced his hours at work. Started going to therapy, something I never had the guts to do at his age. He brought Lena by almost every evening and we built a rhythm. Dinner, bath, bedtime story, then one quiet hour just sitting. Sometimes talking. Sometimes just existing. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own family. But peace, I've learned, is always temporary. Because just when you think the storm has passed, the next one's already forming on the horizon. It started with a letter. Plain white envelope. No return address. Addressed to me. Inside, a single sheet of paper. And one sentence. You don't know what she's planning. No name. No explanation. Just that. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again under the porch light like maybe the shadows would give me a clue. Jenna? Wells. But why now? And what was she planning? I didn't tell Nathan right away. I didn't want to add fuel to the fire or derail the progress we'd made. But the letter stayed on my mind. Every time Jenna picked up Lena. Every time she spoke just a little too sweetly. Every time her eyes lingered a second too long on the photos in Nathan's hallway, the ones with me holding Lena. Something was coming. And this time, I wasn't sure we were ready. I held that letter in my hand for 3 days before I said anything. You don't know what she's planning. I kept reading those words in my head over and over. Every time Jenna knocked on the door to pick up Lena, every time she smiled too politely, my instincts kicked in. I'd built a life on gut feelings, measuring trust in inches, not miles. And something about that envelope, it felt like a warning. It was Nathan who noticed first. You've been quiet, he said one night as we cleaned up after dinner. I'm always quiet, I replied. Not like this. I didn't want to worry him. He was finally starting to get his footing again. But sons grow up knowing the small creases in their father's face, just like I used to recognize the warning in my old man's silence. So I told him. I handed him the letter. He read it, blinked, then read it again. This could be from anybody. Could be, I said. But I think we both know it isn't. He ran a hand through his hair, then sat down slowly. You think Jenna's up to something? I think she's never truly accepted me being back in your life. I think she's made peace with it, on the surface. But underneath. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the letter. Then finally, she asked about custody last week. I looked up. What? She wanted to know what would happen if I traveled more for work. If I'd consider giving her full custody. She said it was just a question, not a threat. But threats often come disguised as questions. And you said? I asked. I told her no. Absolutely not. Lena stays with me, with us. I felt something cold settle in my gut. She didn't push, he added quickly. She just nodded. But that was before this letter. I leaned back, exhaled slowly. Then we need to be ready. That night, I went through everything. Legal documents, shared custody agreements, even old emails from the mortgage days. I wasn't looking for evidence. I was looking for patterns. And sure enough, I found them. Jenna had slowly rewritten herself in their narrative. Where once she was indifferent to Lena's care, now she framed herself as the one holding the family together. She'd even posted online photos, captions, stories that painted a different reality. One where Nathan was absent, and she was the sole provider. It wasn't just a shift in tone. It was preparation. 2 weeks later, Nathan received the papers. A petition for full custody citing emotional instability and unsafe living conditions on his part, with subtle suggestions that I was unfit to be around the child. The sting of betrayal didn't hit like a slap. It hit like a quiet sigh you've been holding in for years. He brought the documents over that night, shaking. She's trying to erase us, he said, voice hollow. Me, you, everything we've built. I looked at him, this grown man who still carried the boy I raised inside him, and I saw what Jenna hadn't, resilience. She won't, I said, because we're going to fight. And we did. The legal battle stretched into months. There were hearings, testimonies, mediation sessions where Jenna sat across the table with a lawyer who spoke more than she did. But the truth has a quiet strength when it's backed by actions. Nathan had proof of everything, calendars, receipts, daycare logs. I provided statements, not accusations. We didn't try to destroy her. We just told the truth. Plain and simple. And in the end, that truth stood tall. The judge ruled shared custody, with strict schedules and mandatory mediation for all future conflicts. No one won, not officially. But Nathan didn't lose his daughter. And I didn't lose my place in her life. The last time I saw Jenna, she was buckling Lena into her car seat. She looked up, eyes meeting mine across the driveway. For the first time in a long while, there was no bitterness in her face. Just exhaustion. Maybe even acceptance. Take care of her, I said quietly. I always do, she replied. Then she drove off, leaving behind a storm we'd all barely weathered. Now, months later, Lena's birthday is around the corner. She's learning to say Grandpa, and every time she does, something inside me heals. Nathan and I still have our quiet nights, dinners, cartoons, long talks about the future. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And for the first time in a very long time, I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm just living. Because family isn't about blood or even memory. It's about who shows up when things fall apart, and stays to help you build it back. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever been left out and had to claw your way back, you're not alone. And if this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the strongest truths. And some stories deserve to be heard, especially the ones people tried to bury.